I mean, if you think domestic gardening is like a peaceful hobby,
Yeah.
you probably never tried to keep something alive on a modern high-rise balcony.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a completely different beast, you know?
Right. We have this culturally ingrained image of a gardener in a wide-brimmed hat.
Gently misting delicate ferns.
Yeah. Well, classical music plays in the background or something. But today, for this deep dive, we are tossing that tranquil imagery right over the railing.
Because the reality of balcony gardening isn't a sanctuary.
No, it's not. It's basically a botanical gladiator arena.
It truly is. I mean, we are looking at a space that strips away all those protective illusions we have about horticulture. It's a highly exposed, highly volatile microenvironment.
And that brutal reality is the focus of today's deep dive. Welcome, by the way, to everyone listening. We're looking at a fascinating, brief, but honestly incredibly dense dispatch from a gardener's journal.
Yeah, it's a great source.
The post is titled Notes on Gardening Part 958 by an author named Ang. And it was just published today, July 17, 2026. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because Ang has essentially been running an unintentional survival experiment on a backyard balcony. And it's in a tropical climate out of all the plant species they gathered.
Which is just punishing.
Totally. And the undisputed champion of this concrete jungle is the Scarlet Sage, which is known scientifically as salvia-splendens.
Right, and that scientific name splendens, implying brilliance or splendor, it ends up being incredibly fitting.
Though maybe not for the reasons a casual observer might think.
Exactly. Our objective today is to really dissect this journal entry, to understand the biological mechanics of true resilience. We are going to look at the evolutionary strategies that allow a plant to survive extreme isolation.
Just wild to think about.
It is. And we'll get into the fascinating tension between perception and reality in nature, and how a plant can fundamentally manipulate a human being's behavior.
I love that part. But I want to start right at the scene of the crime, the balcony itself. In the journal, Ang mentions gathering many plant species for this space, but then makes a very deliberate methodological choice.
A very hands-off choice.
Yeah, Ang writes that they have intentionally let nature take its own course. Now, I have to stop right there and just kind of push back on that phrase.
For sure.
Because if you put a potted plant on a suspended concrete slab 10 stories in the air, there is no nature taking its course. It's completely removed from any natural ecosystem.
What's fascinating here is the sheer extremity of that passive approach. I mean, you're exactly right to challenge the term nature in this context.
Because it's totally artificial.
Right.
Yeah.
In a true natural ecosystem, a plant has this massive support network. It has deep soil to draw moisture from.
Right, like groundwater.
Yeah, and it has mycorrhizal fungal networks to share nutrients. It has taller canopy trees to buffer the wind. And crucially, it has predatory insects to manage pest populations.
Right. If an aphid attacks a plant in the ground, eventually a ladybug shows up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But on a balcony, the plant is totally isolated. It's on its own.
Precisely. On a balcony, letting nature take its course actually translates to, well, deliberate biological abandonment.
Wow, abandonment.
Yeah, because the plant is trapped in a container, meaning its root zone is entirely restricted to whatever soil volume is in that pot.
There's no one for the roots to run.
None. And it is subjected to the thermal mass of the concrete, which, absorbs tropical heat all day and then radiates it back out all night. It's essentially baking the root system.
So it's basically a sterile stress test. You're putting a living organism in an artificial wind tunnel that doubles as an oven, and you're saying, all right, let's see what you got.
That is the exact scenario. When you gather multiple species and apply a laissez-faire management style in an environment like that, you aren't cultivating a garden.
What are you doing then?
You are filtering for extreme genetic hardiness. You are asking which of these organisms possesses the internal mechanisms to withstand compounded environmental trauma without any external ecological support. And that leads us to the gauntlet our champion had to run. Because Ang doesn't just say the Scarlet Sage had a tough time. Ang specifically documents a trifecta of stress.
A very specific trifecta.
Yeah, this salvia-splendens faced pest infestations, strong winds, and the relentless baseline intensity of a tropical climate.
All at the same time.
Right. And Ang notes it isn't just surviving, it's actively thriving. But I need you to explain the mechanics to me because it sounds impossible. How does a single plant in a pot fend off bugs, wind, and heat all at once?
It's a lot to handle.
Let's start with the pests. Because without ladybugs or natural predators, isn't a potted plant just a sitting duck?
Well, it would be if it were defenseless, but salvia-splendens belongs to the Lamiaceae family, the mint family.
Oh, okay.
And a hallmark of this family is their highly sophisticated biochemical warfare. You've probably noticed that plants like mint, basil, sage, and rosemary all have very strong scents.
Yeah, I mean, we use them for cooking precisely because of those oils.
Exactly, but they don't produce those essential oils for our culinary benefit.
Right, they aren't making pesto for us.
No, those volatile organic compounds, terpenes and phenolic compounds, are housed in these specialized microscopic structures on the leaves called glandular trichomes.
Okay.
When a pest, like a spider mite or an aphid, lands on the leaf and tries to bite into it, it ruptures those glands, and the plant literally releases these highly concentrated, toxic, or deterrent chemicals directly into the pest's face.
Wait, really? So the plant is literally weaponized. It's covered in microscopic chemical landmines.
That's a great way to visualize it, yeah. It requires an immense amount of metabolic energy to produce those oils, but in an isolated environment like a balcony, where no predatory insects are coming to the rescue, well, that localized chemical defense is the only thing keeping the plant from being entirely consumed.
Okay, so that handles the bugs. It's fighting back.
Yeah.
But what about the wind and the heat? Ang specifically mentions strong winds, and I've seen what wind does to standard balcony plants.
They're not pretty.
No, it snaps the stems and shreds the foliage.
Wind is structurally devastating, sure, but it's also biologically devastating because it accelerates desiccation.
Oh, drying out.
Right. Think about blowing on a hot spoonful of soup to cool it down. You are moving the boundary layer of air and accelerating evaporation. Wind on a balcony aggressively strips moisture from the plant's leaves through its stomata, the tiny pores it uses to breathe.
Meaning the plant is simultaneously fighting structural trauma and rapid onset dehydration.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where true botanical resilience is defined. The scarlet sage counteracts this in a few really clever ways. Structurally, plants in the mint family have distinctively square stems.
Wait, square, not round.
Yeah, square stems. This geometric structure actually provides a remarkable degree of tensile strength and flexibility. It allows the stems to bend in high shear winds without snapping, much like modern skyscraper engineering, honestly.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
A square stem is more aerodynamically resilient than a round one for a plant.
In the context of the lignin distribution in these specific plants, yes, absolutely. It provides structural ridges that resist shear force.
That is wild.
And to combat the dehydration, the plant regulates its stomata meticulously. It closes them during the peak wind and heat of the tropical day to lock moisture inside its tissues.
Even if it needs to breathe.
Even if that means temporarily halting photosynthesis. It's this constant microscopic calculus going on. Do I open my pores to eat or close them so I don't bleed out my water supply?
Man. So when Ang observes this plant thriving, it isn't just sitting there passively enjoying the weather. It is engaged in an aggressive, high-stakes physiological battle every single second of the day.
It is the absolute definition of biological tenacity. We often confuse tropical with fragile because, well, humans try to cultivate these plants in climate-controlled living rooms.
Right, behind double pane glass.
Exactly. But in its exposed state, the scarlet sage proves it is an opportunistic, heavily armored survivor.
I love this transition in Ang's journal, though,
Yeah.
because we have this tough, chemically weaponized, wind-resistant survivor, right?
Yeah.
And you would picture something that looks like a gnarly weed or a thorny cactus. But the narrative completely shifts to the plant's visual aesthetics. Ang makes this wonderfully honest, almost petty critique in the journal.
The aesthetic evaluation, yeah, it really highlights the human element of gardening.
Ang straight up admits to not really liking the shape of the flowers. The journal describes the blooms as elongated and tubular. Ang is basically saying, look, the shape is a bit awkward.
It's just a bit clunky.
Yeah, but Ang immediately concedes that the vibrant red coloration of these blooms is undeniably attention-grabbing. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the botanical sleight of hand.
Yes. Ang reveals that these vibrant, attention-grabbing red blooms that are persisting on the balcony for weeks, they aren't actually the flowers at all.
Nope.
They're the calyces. Now, I know the calyx is the outer protective layer of a flower, but explain to us what is physically happening here.
So, in a typical floral structure, you have the corolla, which is the collection of petals, the actual reproductive organ of the plant.
It's the part the bees go into.
Right, and that's the tubular part Ang doesn't like. Wrapping around the base of those petals is the calyx. Usually, it's a small, green, leaf-like cup that protects the flower bud before it opens.
Right, like the little green star at the top of a strawberry.
Exactly like that. But in salvia-splendens, the calyx isn't just a small green cup. It is enlarged, and crucially, it is pigmented with the exact same vibrant scarlet red as the flower petals.
It's camouflaged.
In a way, yeah. Aang observes that the actual flower, the corolla, does its reproductive job and then falls off quite quickly. It just detaches.
So the flower's gone.
But the bright red calyx stays firmly attached to the stem.
It's an absolute illusion. I was reading this and trying to find the right analogy. It's like a botanical magic trick.
How do you mean?
Well, imagine you're at a crowded party and someone walks in wearing an incredibly flashy neon red coat. Everyone notices them. They are the center of attention.
Okay, I'm with you.
But then they quietly slip out the back door.
Yeah.
Before they leave, though, they drape that flashy red coat over a chair right in the middle of the room.
That's brilliant, because what happens to the people at the party?
Everyone keeps glancing over at the chair. They see the red out of the corner of their eye, and their brain registers, oh, that vibrant person is still here. The energy in the room stays high, even though the actual person is long gone.
It's just the jacket.
It's just the jacket. That is exactly what the Scarlet Sage is doing. It creates the impression of a massive, long-lasting bloom just by leaving its jacket behind. But why? From an evolutionary standpoint, why does the plant waste energy keeping a bright red calyx alive if the actual flower is already dead and gone?
Well, this raises an important question about how plants communicate over distance, because that red coat serves a critical ecological function. Hummingbirds and specific pollinators are drawn to the color red.
Okay, so it's a beacon.
Exactly. By retaining the bright red calyx, the plant continues to act as a massive visual billboard. It signals to a hummingbird flying 100 yards away, hey, there's food over here.
But wait, if the hummingbird flies over and the flower is gone, isn't the bird just getting tricked? There's no nectar left.
Ah, but a plant doesn't produce just one flower. It produces an inflorescence, a stalk with dozens of buds that open sequentially over time.
Oh, I see.
By keeping the old calyces red, the plant maintains a massive, highly visible color block. The hummingbird is drawn to the overall display, and once it arrives, it finds the newer, younger flowers on the same stalk that do have nectar.
That is so smart.
The older calyces are essentially acting as wingmen for the younger buds.
Wow, that is incredibly sophisticated. So it's a signaling multiplier. It maintains the advertising budget without having to maintain the expensive nectar production for the older flower.
Precisely. And furthermore, that persisting calyx continues to photosynthesize to some degree, and it acts as a physical cradle.
A cradle for what?
For the developing seeds, the nutlets. It protects them from the very wind and pests we talked about earlier. It's a multi-purpose evolutionary adaptation.
And what's wild is that this adaptation evolved to hack the visual perception of birds and bees. But on Aang's balcony, it accidentally hacks the perception of a human being.
It absolutely did. I mean, think about how Aang processes this. The success of the plant, in Aang's eyes, the very thing that is delighting the gardener, is based almost entirely on the lingering remnant of the flower.
The actual biological event is fleeting.
Yes. But the plant has evolved to maintain the aesthetic of the bloom. And in an environment like a curated balcony, human attention is the ultimate currency.
That is such a profound way to look at it. Human attention is the currency of survival for domestic plants. Aang doesn't care that the actual flower is gone. The red is still there, holding the space, defying the harsh tropical climate.
And that leads perfectly into the climax of Aang's journal entry.
It does. Because after observing this incredible survival run and being captivated by this persisting red illusion, Aang makes a massive pivot.
Yes, the narrative completely shifts from passive observation to active intervention.
The journal concludes with Aang deciding that because the plant has survived so well and looks so striking, perhaps this is the right time to start propagating them.
Which is huge. We have to contrast that with where we began. Aang started as the detached scientist, intentionally letting nature take its course.
Right.
Aang put out a bunch of species and basically stood back to see who would die and who would live.
The ultimate hands-off manager.
Exactly. But now, Aang is stepping into the arena. Aang is actively choosing to take cuttings or collect seeds to intentionally multiply this specific salvia-splendens.
So what does this all mean? When I read that conclusion, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it.
The irony is rich, yeah.
Because think about what the plant actually accomplished here. It was abandoned on a concrete slab. It got battered by wind, attacked by pests, and baked in the sun.
And it handled it all.
It used its chemical defenses, its structural engineering, and its visual trickery to conquer that gauntlet completely on its own.
It proved absolute self-sufficiency.
Right. But by proving you absolutely didn't need Aang's help to survive what happened, it earned Aang's help.
Yes.
Because it was so tough and so visually stubborn, it won the gardener's favor. Now it doesn't have to struggle alone anymore. The human is going to carefully propagate it, maybe give the new cuttings premium soil, water them gently. The resilience is what triggered the reward of human intervention.
It's the paradox of artificial selection. The plants on that balcony that actually needed Aang's help, the delicate ones that withered under the heat or were consumed by the pests, they didn't get saved.
No, they're just compost.
They were left to the harsh reality of the experiment, but the Scarlet Sage, the one organism that demonstrated it could survive without human curation, is the one that secures its genetic future through human curation.
It completely reframes what domestic gardening actually is. We like to think we are in charge. We go to the nursery. We pick what we like. We design the space.
We think we're the masters of the domain.
Yeah. But looking at Aang's journal, it feels much more like a negotiation where the plant is in the driver's seat.
It is a form of coevolution. I mean, plants have spent millions of years evolving traits to manipulate the behavior of animals to ensure their survival and reproduction.
Like bees and birds.
Exactly. Bright colors and sweet nectar train bees to visit them. Fruiting bodies train birds to spread their seeds. In the context of a balcony garden, the Scarlet Sage utilized its extreme hardiness and its extended aesthetic display to train a human.
To train a human. That's exactly what happened. The plant put on a master class in survival, dropped its bright red jacket on the chair to keep the human's attention, and Aang fell for it perfectly.
Hook, line, and sinker.
It leveraged its biology to secure an evolutionary victory.
It's an acknowledgement from the gardener that out of all the species tested, this specific genetic line earned its right to continue. It's a mutual respect born out of extreme conditions.
I love that. Earned its place through chemical warfare, structural grit, and a highly effective optical illusion.
It's quite the resume.
It really is.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to pull all of these threads together, because Aang managed to pack a massive ecological drama into a really tiny journal entry.
It's impressive.
We started on the hostile microenvironment of a tropical balcony, an artificial space where letting nature take its course is actually a brutal test of isolation.
And we examined the specific, unseen mechanisms of the Scarlet Sage. How its glandular trichomes deploy chemical defenses against pests, and how its physical structure and stomatal regulation allow it to withstand wind shear and extreme desiccation.
We uncovered the brilliant botanical illusion of the calyces, the discovery that the long-lasting, vibrant red display isn't the flower at all.
Just the jacket.
Just the jacket, a persisting outer layer that acts as a billboard for pollinators and ultimately as bait for a human gardener.
And we saw how that combination of aggressive survival and persistent aesthetic appeal completely shifted the human-plant dynamic, turning Aang from a passive observer into an active agent of the plant's reproduction.
It is a masterclass in adaptation, proving that sometimes the strongest move you can make is just refusing to fade away. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Aang's journal and the remarkable salvia-splendens.
It's been a great journey.
It has. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to think about, inspired by the Scarlet Sage's brilliant visual trickery.
I like where this is going.
Think about those persisting red calyces. They hold their color, they demand attention, and they maintain the impression of a vibrant, ongoing event long after the core action, the actual flower, has finished and fallen away.
So true.
Look around your own life, your industry, or the culture at large. What else out there is functioning like a red calyx? What systems, what institutions, or even what personal habits are maintaining a flashy, attention-grabbing illusion of blooming long after the core substance has quietly slipped out the back door?
That is a fascinating question.
It's a fascinating lens to view the world through. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.